Okay, welcome everybody, and thank you for being here. This is the second webinar this year related to the Uruk platform. We delivered one about 3 weeks ago, and we have today. And we have one more on June 28th. And these three webinars are somewhat, they have some overlap, but mostly about the Uruk platform and concept related to project management and respecting our diversity. Some of the theme we've been promoting as Uruk project management is that basically project management is not the same everywhere. So as a result of that, we have to look for ways of respecting the diversity of the organization and the type of the project that they use. They use project management in general. And of course, the Uruk platform that we are building is being built with that mindset that it has to be adaptive, it has to be scalable, it has to be specific to different type of organization on project. And that where this specific webinar coming into the picture on talking about tailoring as a concept. For those who are familiar with the project management and with the Project Management Institute and the PMBOK Guide, tailoring has been there since the first edition of the PMBOK Guide. However, maybe with the last 7th edition of the PMBOK Guide, they put more emphasis on the idea of principle-based project management and the idea of tailoring. In this seminar, in this webinar today, we will focus more on not talking about the theory of tailoring, but also how are we applying it in our project and in our platform. So with this, let me go forward and proceed with the discussion. So we are saying what we are saying here, and we definitely believe in it, and not only believe in it, I'm not giving you, motherhood statement. I'm giving you where we are. We have invested a lot of time and money into building a company that focus on the principle of tailoring. That's how important we believe tailoring is, and this is why we really know is tailoring is a must for value delivery. Now let's go through the slide, and we can have question whenever. If you feel like to interrupt me, go ahead and interrupt me. Otherwise, you can wait till the end. I'm going to cover four topics. Maybe the last one is the biggest one, which is basically answering the question or talking about these four general categories. What is tailoring and why do we need it? And we talk about the levels of project management. In Uruk, we are adopting the concept that project management is not the same, so there are different levels. Unfortunately, our community uses the word project management to mean many things. Well, today we are trying to translate those many things into what we call levels of project management. And then we'll talk about the method. Another area of confusion is what is the project management method, right? And everybody uses the definition of a method to mean different things. So what is the definition of a method and what are the components of a PM method? So basically to talk about what constitutes a PM method. And then we will talk about tailoring in the context of the Uruk platform. So what is tailoring? If we look at this, and basically what we know is that, and give you an opportunity to think about this, is not sure if your vision is blocked. Basically, the one thing I want you to think about these few questions I'm going to raise on the slide. One is project in all sectors and domain have common concept, right? Whether you work in IT or technology or event or marketing or oil and gas or utilities or renewable energy, project should have some kind of scope, should have some cost and budget, should have some timeline and schedules, should have some quality, risk. We might experience, obviously have teams, they have stakeholders, they have communication. We know all projects have these things. So that's common. However, there are certain concepts that are directly affected by the type of project. For example, if we want to manage a project in oil and gas, is completely different, or not completely. It has the scope and the cost, the same thing, but they are managed at a different level than, for example, managing a marketing project or a student project or an event project. So usually when we come to these organizations, we need to think about the domain expertise. How would, for example, renewable energy manage project different than technology? And within technology, how do we manage software development versus a digital transformation, for example? Right? So we need to understand what we call the domain expertise or sectors and domain and type of project, because how we manage scope and cost and schedule and the method that we use and the project lifecycle we use will be different. I think that is well understood. I don't have to convince anybody of that. Also, whether you work for a service provider, let's say you are a construction company or an engineering company or software development company, as a service provider, you are doing work for a client. Your way of managing project and your life cycle might be different than, for example, how the owner would do things. So these are the things that we're raising here for you to think about. But this is basically what drives us toward the idea of tailoring. And when we would lead to the idea that tailoring would be necessary to ensure that the method, the concept, the approach align well with the type of the project, its size and complexity. Right? So basically, I'm reading these comments here, but that's so far what I have been doing in this introduction is that tailoring is necessary to be closely linked to the type of project, the size of the project, the complexity of the project, and there are many other variables as we will see later. Therefore, we believe tailoring is a must for value delivery, which means project success. And when we talk about value delivery, that means we are delivering the project successfully, and we're realizing the benefit. As project owner, for example, when we launch project, we're not launching project because we like to spend money. We are launching project because we're expecting some benefit. We're expecting value. We're expecting value to our shareholders. We expect value to our stakeholders. And of course, that means everybody who's involved. So as a result of that, we believe tailoring is a must. Okay? I think that just reinforce our view. Maybe somebody would disagree with this and would love to hear that opinion later in the presentation as with the question and answer. So with that in mind, I think that will allow us to go to the next level. Okay, what does it mean, levels? Today, if I ask you the question, can you name for me some project management tools? And I'm sure many of you would come up with many tools out in the market. If we talked about, if I ask you, what do you do? And some of you might be project managers, right? And you're using that title. It's funny in the industry, sometimes people, they have the project management title, but in reality, they're not really managing project. They might be coordinating some work, coordinating some task, but they have the title. And sometimes people are really managing complex project and they don't have the project manager title. So here I'm not focusing on the title, I'm focusing on project management. When we talk about we are managing project or we are working in project management, what does it mean? Unfortunately, we don't even agree on the definition of the term of the word project. So we don't agree on project management. So let's see in that case, and that were a few months ago and a long time ago, but mostly in the last few weeks or months, it started to basically maybe label this as respecting the diversity. So we're not saying, for example, if you work in one domain or another, one is good and one is bad, or if you have one definition of project management is good and another definition is bad. What we're saying is that the reality is we are involved with different type of organization. We are involved with different type of project. As a result of that, we use different definition of the word project. And consequently, we have different definition of the word project management and the way we manage project. So instead of continue to fight over, agile or waterfall or this, so basically what we're saying is, let us respect our diversity and understand project management, that there are different levels of project management. And by level, we don't mean one is better than the other, it's just basically maybe a different categorization. So let me explain what these things are. One is what I call maybe is a basic level where many of us could be working, is what we call task management, level one. Ideally, most of us or all of us are probably involved in managing tasks. Now, we're not talking about tasks here from a business perspective because there are tasks every day in our life, personal or business. We're talking about tasks related to project. obviously we have maybe a small project. Maybe we are working within a stage, and as a result, we have different tasks we need to fulfill. A project manager in this case, a project coordinator, a program manager, a team leader, whatever the title might be, will basically break down the work into tasks and distribute the tasks to different team members to do the work. So, but basically the focus here is we are managing tasks, but we don't say we have a task manager. We say we have project manager, because the person who is responsible for this is probably managing the project, but in a way, managing the project, basically we're limiting the work to dividing things into tasks and doing tasks. There is no methodology, for example. That's what I'm trying to hint about here. There is no formal methodology or formal process. It's basically just managing different type of tasks, and which might be good enough. If you are working on simple project, very small project, few people involved, few weeks in duration, that might be perfect. That might be more than you need. Anything more than that might be an overkill, right? So again, that's why we're saying this is a level of project management, or a category of project management. And this could be used on agile development project or sequential development, what some people like to call waterfall. You will find me avoiding the word waterfall, but basically this technique for managing tasks exists in all of these approaches. And of course, there are many tools in this area. Some of them are mostly in the software area that we use to help us manage tasks. So this is one level of of project management. The second level is where we might be involved in managing a stage. And here where the PMBOK guide and ISO are very useful, because technically what we say, well, we have a stage we need to manage. Now, in that case, we have to initiate, if we use a PMI terminology, we have to initiate the stage, we plan the stage, we execute the stage, we control the stage, and we close when we are done. What you see here is slightly different. There are 6 steps here, not 5. And these are the Uruk, or what we have developed years ago, is basically, it's a 6-step process, not 5. Right? So we have 6 process group, not 5. And each one of these include many steps below it, depend on the size of the project. So basically what we are saying is that we need to manage a stage. Some of us involved, for example, if you are a software development company or a construction company, you are probably involved in the stage, the implementation stage of a client project. So for you, that is your project. Your project, for example, is to develop a software app. Okay, that's great. That's your project. But your client project is much bigger than that. So in your case, if you are the service provider and you are working on this project, you might be able to do it with this way. You initiate, you plan, you execute, you control. And you can use it, of course, you can use, again, sequential development or agile development. And there are many tasks to be involved across in every one of these steps. But your focus in this case, your project boundary, is from the time you get a contract until the time to hand over the output, and you're done. So that is more of a stage management. Again, we don't see us calling people, oh, you are a stage manager. We use the term project manager if somebody is doing this. And the Uruk platform, we actually have a name for that. We call them stage leader, right? Which is a position under the project manager. Then we have what I call personally, what maybe most of you call project management, and I call technical project management. Now, again, the word technical here is nothing, it has nothing to do with technology. This is more of the pure form of project management. Some of us studied the PMBOK guide, become PMP certified, or studied ISO or some kind of other standard. And usually most of those guides fit into this category. What does it mean? That means the project start with the charter. The project start with the charter. So sometime, this starting point here would be an authorization or a charter document. You might do some requirement design, implement, and then you close. So it's typically technical project management is start with a charter and with delivering an output. And of course, maybe doing closure. And some people don't do closure. But again, the key here element, that's why I call it very technical, pure project management, is that your job is to deliver on the charter and you are delivering an output, and you're done. If you deliver the output with the parameters that are established for you, a great success, we move on. So that is one level of project management. And this could be used by service provider and could be used by project owner as well. And usually we don't find many software tools for specifically for this. You'll find software tool for task management, except tools like MS Project, where it allows you to do scheduling across the entire life cycle. But there are no specific tool, for example, or a solution that says how you manage a project. Maybe there are approaches where some of the things that are practiced inside the organization. Yes, they exist. But however, if we're talking about technology, I'm not sure what, definitely we see a gap in the area that covers the entire life cycle. Then we move to maybe one more level, said, okay, level 4, which is what? Now let's focus on product delivery. Notice this image here is almost identical to the previous one, except we added here a stage in the front called discovery. If you recall, if you was studying for PMI or you've been into the PMI world, basically, there is a charter as a starting point, as we mentioned on the previous slide. Now, the charter, according to the PMBOK guide, come after the discovery stage or phase. It come after management have made a decision to proceed with the project. So all the work that has happened before, it happened, but it wasn't part of the project lifecycle model. So the focus, and we're using the term product delivery in this case to distinguish it from technical project management, because in this case, the project start with an idea, and we do a business case, and we do a feasibility study before we can issue the charter. Okay, so we are starting with an idea, which is more or less a product vision. What is the vision for that product? But still ultimately end with maybe a product being delivered. So this is why we call this is the product delivery model that is focusing on basically it goes from, let me step back. Technical project management, charter to output. Product delivery model, it basically go back to product vision or idea to output, to the product being delivered, right? So the end point is more or less the same. The starting point is somewhat different. It's wider in this case, where here we are integrating project management with the front end side on business, which is definitely a good approach. If you are a project owner, a contractor, you might not have the privilege to do this because you are not involved at the idea stage. You get involved on a project, maybe when a client send you a request for proposal or request for an engagement. So I probably need to pause here, and because I'm transitioning in the topic. So what we are saying is, just to close, to do some closure on this section of the presentation, is that basically what we are saying is that depend on who you are and where you work and what type of company you work for. Obviously, you could be using one of these different models. So basically we call them levels. And the reason we call them level, because technically speaking, with each level, we are adding scope. So the word level here does not mean one is better than the others. Obviously, if I'm working for a project owner, ideally, I should be working at least on level 4. Whereas if I work for a service provider, a level 1 or 2 might be more than enough, right? So, there is a hierarchy in this case, but the hierarchy, it doesn't mean, again, I'm repeating because I know sometimes people get offended. We're not saying one is higher level or smarter than the other, right? They are different type. And that's part of the idea of this whole presentation, tailoring, right? So depend on where you are and who you are and what type of project you work on, you can choose one of these 4 levels. Now, before I go to the final level, level 5, which basically what we're calling the value delivery, right? Because this presentation about tailoring is a must for value delivery, as you can see in the footnote here. Basically, I need to step back and talk about what is the project management method. We see a lot of debate online today, waterfall versus agile or hybrid, right? And today somebody was posting something on LinkedIn about waterfall, agile, or stage gate. Obviously, many of those posts, unfortunately, I have to be direct and honest and open. It's so annoying that sometimes I'm unfollowing a lot of people or a lot of groups because of those kind of posts, because we get sick and tired of correcting people. Waterfall is not a project management methodology. It has never been. Anyone who understands the proper, effective, competent project management, no, waterfall is not a project management method. Agile is not a project management method, right? I don't care how much people post out there and how much PMI talk about agile methodologies and people talk about agile methodology. Even PMI itself, forgive me for saying this, if anybody here is a PMI fan, is that even PMI itself is confused on this concept. And I've had many discussions with the PMI CEO on this. And I'm hoping one day PMI will be publishing something to clarify there is a difference between agility, agile development, and agile project management does not exist. I haven't got I have got them to admit to that in private, not in public so far. I hope one day they will be publishing something about this. So agile, waterfall, if somebody want to use the waterfall concept, are about development of work, not about managing the work. If we go back to the Agile Manifesto in 2001, I think, or 2002, it's very clearly talked about software development, not in a single principle or values of the Agile Manifesto where they talk about managing the development or managing the project. Even PMI itself on the Agile Practice Guide, they clearly say Agile is not a project management methodology. So that brings us to the topic here. We keep talking about project management method. So what does it mean? Well, first, let me say what it doesn't mean. If we ask people to tell us what is a project management method or project life cycle, unfortunately, some people come with this, which is a process group, and which is definitely not the case. And unfortunately, many people who even teach the PMP, they sometimes they talk about the project life cycle as being initiating, planning, executing, controlling, and closing. That technically, if you ever have someone tell you like this, that's clearly someone who does not understand PMI and the PMBOK guide, because the PMBOK guide is very clear that these are process group. They are not project phases. They are supposed to be repeated in every phase, right? So every phase must be initiated, planned, executed, controlled, and closed. You finish with phase one, you go to phase two, and you repeat the process. Now, PMI have 49 processes. That doesn't mean you apply the 49 processes in every phase, but at least many of them apply in every phase, right? So we have to be careful how we do this, because once we use those process group as project phases, we are basically confusing the product with the project management process. So PMBOK guide is very clear that is not offer a methodology. And so what is the PM method? Come back to the same question. Well, again, I don't want to argue with people, but basically I'm saying when we hear the word project management method, don't take it for granted. Always ask for context. For example, in project management, there is something we call critical path method. So we are using the word method in that case. We use earned value technique or earned value management or earned value method. We might use the PESTLE method for risk management. We might use a lot of method on the project to do something related to cost or schedule or risk or whatever the case might be. Now, people like to call those our project management method. That's fine. I have no problem if that's what they want to call them. However, we need to understand those are very specific. Actually, maybe the word technique is more appropriate than the word method. But if they want to use the word method, so be it. There are techniques that we use typically on a project, within a project, and often enough within a knowledge area of the project. So cost or schedule or risk or quality, right? So we need to understand that, okay, if some people are talking about project management method, like agile development, if people want to think that is a method, that's fine. That is a software development method. If you want, I don't agree with that, but if somebody want to see it as such, so be it. And, again, the idea here, we want to educate, we don't want to fight. So in that case, understand the context that when we talk about project management method, this is one area where people think of project management are. Same thing when we talk about, Jira or Asana or Monday.com, they are project management tools. They are tools to help with task management or some collaboration or timesheet. So they are helping in a specific area. They are not offering a project management method. So what is the other definition, which is the definition we follow, is that a method to manage the entire project across the life cycle, because I need to manage a project. PM method is a method to manage project, right? Which means, how do I manage the project? And in my case, how do I manage the project? Not how to manage a piece of the project, not to manage cost or schedule or quality. How do I manage the entire project, which means all the way from beginning to end across the entire life cycle. So we are very unique. And again, I'm not saying we are right and everybody else is wrong. This is a definition, right? So our approach is, when we use the word project management method, we mean a method to help us manage the entire project across the entire life cycle, beginning to end. And that's the prime vision, philosophy behind everything we're doing in Uruk. Okay, and I'll clarify as we move forward. So we said a PM method, it helps us manage across the whole project. So what are the components of such a method? There are 6 components. So let me actually challenge some of you and make this statement. Some people said, well, there are many methods in project management. In our review, there is one method only. One method only, and that's the method here. We're not saying Uruk. Notice, please be careful. I'm not saying Uruk is the only method out there. What I'm saying is, when it comes to the theory, the principle, the application of project management, there's only one method. And that method has 6 components that I will discuss some here, right? Now, they have to be tailored through the industry, and that's where we're saying then we end up with numerous tailored method. I need to emphasize that terminology, and you will see it. So what does a project management consist of? One, ideally, it must have a project lifecycle. Every project must have a span of time, basically a beginning and an end. And usually in a project lifecycle, we have stages or phases. So there has to be a project lifecycle that fit the industry or domain you are in. Then, as a result of that project lifecycle will be divided into phases or stages, depend on the terminology you like to use. We must manage every stage using stage management processes like what PMI offer and ISO. Every stage have a deliverable, has an output, right? Every stage have an output. The design stage will produce design. Requirement stage will produce a requirement document. Every stage output, stage deliverable, that is an output, it needs to go through a decision point. Usually we call them stage gate, right? So that is 5 of the component. I said there are 6. Where is the 6th one? Well, the 6th one is here. The project management function and action. What does it mean? If you are a PMBOK person, that means the knowledge area. If you are an ISO person, you will say the subject area. However, we call them function and action because PMI and ISO offer 10 knowledge area. We have 23, right? They are definitely much more. Basically, we expand the scope and to focus on areas, for example, they're not covered in the PMBOK guide and ISO. For example, captured lesson, we consider that as an area or an action item that need to be carried out on project, independent of scope, cost, or schedule, or quality, right? It kind of cross between all. We have project success model that is not obviously addressed in those guide. And notice the double dashed line between from the center to all of this, because obviously this PM function and action touch on every one of these areas. So what we are saying, regardless what you want to use in your life, wherever you are, regardless what type of project, and regardless what type of industry, if you are on the project management side, ideally, your project management method should include these 6 components. You design them, you expand them, you develop them any way you want to, right? But you have to consider all these components. Now that brings us to tailoring, and how are we using tailoring in Uruk? Well, based on everything I said, tailoring is basically the ability to develop a specific tailored method, that's the term we use, that fit a certain type of project. So what are the key variables that affect how with the method? So basically those 6 elements, we need to take them and basically convert them into a specific tailored method for a specific application area. So what do we need to consider in that perspective? We need to consider the organization sector and domain. And I will elaborate and I will explain all these terms in the next few slides. We have to understand the project type. We have to understand the project size and complexity and the product development approach. So let me go through them quickly. So a tailored method is a method that has been customized and adapted to fit specific condition aligned with sector, domain, development approach, and project class. So everything I'm going to talk about, we do all of these steps that I will explain. That will give us a tailored method. And obviously in that case, remember what I said, there is only one project management method model, what I shared with you earlier. But from that model, we can produce hundreds of tailored methods. In Uruk itself, we already developed 50 methods. They are existing in our platform today, right? And probably in a year or two, we will have 100 or 200 methods. And maybe every client will have their own method, right? So in terms of a project management method as a model, I'm repeating myself for maybe the 10th time. The model I shared with you earlier, the 6th component is what a project management method should look like. Now, how do we tailor it? How do we customize it? Obviously, that's the question. We need to understand the sector. And by sector here, we mean the group of organizations that work on similar project, right? For example, when we say in Uruk, we're using the word capital project, and we're using the word technology project. So capital project, anything in oil and gas, utilities, anything that deal with projects that produce facilities. Technology, obviously anything related to technology. We could have media, we could have government, we can have aviation. There are many, many sectors out there. Some people like to use the term vertical. For sectors and domain, we split them. So we have sector as a group of domain. A domain is very specific. For example, software development, marketing, fintech, oil and gas, utilities. These are specific domain that could be grouped inside the sector. Again, who cares? You can combine the two if you want and call them a vertical. No big deal, right? But we need to understand. Now, why do we need to understand this? Because we need to understand the type of the project. And that is basically affect how we manage the project. So these are some set of definition. More definition, we use the term project class. So we use the term type and class. A class is a classification system that categorizes project based on size and complexity and degree of innovation. In Uruk, we have different classes from micro project to mega project. And then we have the development approach. Are you going to use, notice I will not use the word waterfall. Are you going to use, let's say, traditional development, which mean more like, I'm going to deliver my product, the project product in one piece at the end. We prefer to call that big bang development, BBD, where we are releasing the final product as one product. I'm building a house as a clinic. It doesn't, if I'm the customer, it doesn't help me to give me the foundation of the clinic, I cannot do anything with it. There is no value for me until you give me the clinic with the door was ready to open to receive patient, right? It's the same thing. A house is no value for me until you give me the whole house. So we call that, some people call that traditional. We call it big bang development. Then we have the agile development, or we call it iterative incremental development, because the word agile development often is confusing. So basically what that means is when we can deliver the product of the project in pieces, right? Obviously software, it makes a lot of sense to build a component or a functionality, test it, then maybe come up with ideas for enhancement, update it. That is iterative development. Or maybe we build something and then later on we add another functionality. That's incremental development, right? So these are key variables for us in order to build a tailored method. Now, one more question here. Which do we use? What development approach do we use? Big bang, right? Or agile? In this case, we are using this very simple process that basically, look, if the product of the project, start with the end in mind. If the product of the project can be delivered in pieces or a whole, I mean, if it can only be delivered as a whole, a house, a clinic, then you must use big bang. You cannot use any other technique. Or if you basically can be delivered in iteration or increment, then you can use iterative or incremental. And guess what? Often enough, we are using all three together. Some areas where we might work for 3, 4, 6 months to develop, like this is how we did the Uruk Platform. We spent a year developing the proof of concept. We came up with one system because I could not release it to the customer. I could not release it to tester. I could not release it to my team to use. So we have to do a big bang for the first part. And then after that, we do iterative incremental. And every once in a while, depend on what functionality we're building, we will use all three together. This is why, sometimes we get so sick and tired of the argument of waterfall or agile. It's either, X or Y, 0 or 1. It's not that way. In real life and practical project management, it cannot be either or, right? And most of this is basically from my book on the project management beyond waterfall and agile, is basically, advancing the idea that we need to go forward. Now, this is level 5. And what we mean by level 5 as a value delivery model, that's the Uruk model, is basically, is very similar to what we showed before, but we highlight some more areas. The light pinkish kind of color is basically the technical project management. This is, I showed something earlier where the project starts with a charter and goes into delivering an output. Whereas we're saying no, integration, if you want to really focus on value delivery as a project owner, right? I must focus on the discovery phase as well, the concept stage and the feasibility stage. So we need to integrate project management with the business side on the front end. And on the back end here, we need to integrate project management with operation. And so how do we integrate these two together, these three areas together, the business, the operation, and technical project management together, is what often help us deliver value to our client and deliver value to our shareholder and our stakeholder. Now, of course, based on everything I discussed so far, the idea, this is just a simple example of a model. In reality, this has to be tailored. Now, what does tailoring mean? Well, let me give you a quick idea here. The number of stages could grow or reduce. I can combine stages for smaller projects, or I can divide stages into more than one. For example, I'll share with you some example here. I'm gonna skip a couple of things because I touched on them. Actually, yeah, let me skip and I'll come back. I'll show you the example. Yeah, for example, in this case, this is our traditional base foundation example of a tailored method. This is another one. And notice in this case, if you compare closely here, we have one implementation stage here. In this model here, we have 2 implementation stages. And here we have 3 implementation stages. This is one way we're showing you how we do tailoring, right? We can split a stage into multiple, or unfortunately, I don't have an example of here. I can combine stages, or I can use agile development here. That the symbol we're using here is to indicate iterative incremental development. So what I can tailor? I can combine stages. That means reducing the number of stages and reducing the number of gate. I can split stages, which means increasing the number of stages and gate, right? I can design, we can tailor every output. So every requirement stage, I can control that output and I can tailor it. I can control the gate, what's happening at the gate. All of that is we can do in part of tailoring in the Uruk platform. So let me step back and I will show you some example. So we use this model to manage the entire project, right? And then obviously, in order to deliver success, I must deliver every stage successfully. And here we use stage management. And in Uruk, we have two models we use. One is a simplified stage management process. Similar, you notice here, it's similar to what PMI and ISO offer. However, it's more simplified. And here is more advanced. So we have two models and depend on the nature of the project you're working on, the nature of the stage you need to manage. You could choose to take the simplified route or the more advanced route. Obviously, if you are working on an engineering stage of a project that might cost $5 million or $10 million or $100 million maybe for engineering only, obviously that become like a mega project by itself. You want to have more of an advanced management option. So what else can we tailor, right? Every model have stage gate. In this model here, there are 9 gates. Some model have 12 gates. Some model have 4 gates. Regardless what tailored method you have and how many gates you have in tailored method, you can set the criteria. Every client can establish their own criteria of so basically, what is the criteria for making decision at that specific gate, right? That is customizable as well, and obviously up to the client. What else? At the decision point, we have an opportunity where we can review the criteria that was established and make modification if needed. We include who are the decision maker, who is sitting in that meeting, right? The steering committee, the sponsor only, who's making the decision at this gate, right? So obviously, if we have a criteria that says engineering head, finance head, HR head need to be in the meeting, ideally, we'd like to see those people in that meeting. And then we make a decision on the gate. So that's already, all of that is as well as part of the tailoring process. I showed you this example. And again, what you see here, there are 50 methods in the platform that would look something like this. We have the micro project with only 4 stages. And we have some project like this one, probably this is the biggest one with 11 stages. Right. So there could be anywhere from 4 to 11 stages or even more, depend. If you start to get into mega project, we could end up with 15 stages, right? Depend how you define things. Of course, we said we have iterative development as an option, but usually notice where it is. It's an implementation. We'll be closing, so we're leaving a question. This is more of the vision we have for how many tailored method we can have in the system. And you notice that there are a lot of potential tailored method we can build. Obviously, we have not built all of them. We will build them based on customer need and requirement as we move forward into the future. Now, okay, this is the last slide. I talked about all of that and how do we materialize that inside the platform. We're not doing a demo today, so I cannot show you this, but this is the principle. Once you set up a project in a Uruk platform, to do a project setup, you have 4 steps. So we have managing an existing project and you have the project setup. So project setup, 4 steps. Step number 1, any team member will go in and set up the project in Uruk. There is a form to fill. Once that's submitted, it goes to gate 0, which means a sponsor have to approve it. Once the sponsor approve it, step 2, it comes to step 3, which is the TMS, the tailored method selection. What is this? This is where the project manager, unless the client have already specific method to use, if they want to use, if the client want to use the method we built so far, 1 out of the 50 method, they're not going to get a list of 50 methods and they're going to have to go read all 50 methods to select from. They can go through a questionnaire like this. They can answer the question number 1, sector. Based on that, we'll open what domain are available, what subdomain might be available, what the project class is, the development mode. Remember, development mode is big bang or iterative. Then how many implementation stages if it is a big bang? And then are we going to have operation stages or not? You answer all of these questions, and the Uruk platform will give you a recommended method. Out of the 50 or maybe 100 methods in the future, will give you one method. So basically, that where we believe, based on the information you provided, what is the method inside the system that matches closely to what you need. Now, of course, as a better choice is that we work with you to build you your own tailored method. Maybe one day we can talk about how we build the tailored method. We can do it for a client within days. 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, or maybe a week, depending on how complex and how many methods a client wants. We can build them a tailored method so they can skip this. And that way the system will automatically go to the tailored method that we have built for them. And with this, I'll close this session and leaving about 10 minutes for questions and answer. I will be happy to start taking questions. I noticed there's a question in the chat about Demio. I honestly, I have no idea about it, Cassandra. So I will definitely, I will use the link you provided. Thank you for the link, and I will investigate it a little bit after the webinar to see what is that tool. Do you care to comment about it, or basically just we'll check it out ourselves? I think Cassandra has left, so she's not here. Okay. Anybody familiar with the Demio tool? Okay. Questions?
I have a question, Munir.
Go ahead.
I know when you mentioned in your slides earlier, when you mentioned about managing projects, to manage and to have a project management methodology, you put it consists of 6 elements, right? You mentioned the 6. My question is, usually this is the most common things that everybody talks about when we talk about managing project. They always run and jump into saying the agile, the waterfall, the hybrid, different, they always talk about the development approach. So that's the first things come to their minds. So I understand from your presentation that it's clearly stated that the development approach comes with the tailored, because projects come to a different, they're different projects from different sector to different domain, and that's why we have to tailor it. But my question is to you, why we did not consider the development approach as part of the project management methodology when you presented the 6 elements in it, not to make it at 7?
Because there is no methodology included, right? But it's not one of the 6, because basically dealing with how you handle the development work. So, basically, how do I say this? Because we're focusing on how we manage the entire project, we're not focusing on how we develop something. If I want to mention agile and those kind of development approach inside the 6 element, the 6 component, then there are probably 50 other things I need to mention, right? So basically what we're saying, the core element is I have to manage every stage depending on what is the most appropriate tools to use for that stage. So the way we develop the product itself, it's basically, it is included in the tailoring steps, but it's not, we don't see it as part of the 6 element, of the 6 core element. Right? Because again, if I want to mention that there are 50 other things I need to mention, I will need to mention critical path method. I will need to mention, the earn value method. I need to mention the change management method. There are a lot of things we need to start getting in there and become too complex. What we're saying is that all of those things are relevant in the way we do the work. They're not the component of what make a methodology. And when people want to talk about using agile or that obviously, if they are involved in product development only, that's fine. That's level 1 that we talked about, level 1 and level 2. They're perfectly okay. In that case, Uruk may not be the best solution for them. They need to use probably any task management tool. Trello might be good enough for them, or Jira, or any of those tools, if they only need to be involved in managing a stage, in managing tasks.
Yeah, thank you.
Other question? All right. Yeah, go ahead.
I have sorry if I'm giving a chance for others. Okay, I have another question. When we presented the last slide, when we talked about the Taylor method of Uruk platform, and you mentioned that on the setting up the project, the slide that you showed us, that when we have to set up a project, we come with the different questions, which is like the sector, the domain, the categories, the class, and everything. And then we talked about the development approach, and we have the final after that, the implementation. So you mentioned that the implementation, you can decide on the number of implementation, 1, 2, 3, it depends on the project. Can we have like different development approach in each implementation, that we can add numbers in it in the Uruk platform? Let's say, because our project is a hybrid, it's mixed between the irritation, the agile and the big bang, the traditional approach. So can we, on Uruk platform, can we have one implementations where it says agile and another implementation what it shows the big bang? Then we have a hybrid way to present it.
There is no such a thing as a hybrid. This whole model is a hybrid model. So basically, when it comes to implementation, we're talking about implementation stage is about developing the product itself, right? So either you do it IAD, you are doing incremental iterative development, or you are doing a big bang, right? When we do big bang, often enough that require, because big bang usually is for facilities, that means it requires engineering, procurement, and construction, or design and build. By default, that cannot be hybrid. I cannot do basically agile design. That confuses the whole issue about, and that's one of the problem of the definition of agile. Basically, if it is a big bang, I have to follow some kind of a sequence, right? So I cannot basically mix and match here. In some project, yeah, I can mix and match within the implementation stage. Within one implementation stage, I might do some increment, and we do it incremental. We can do some increment, as I will work for 3 months to produce something, and we have some other increment where I will do it in basically in iteration, right? And that again, here the options are limitless. It all depends on the nature of the work being done. So this is why we cannot offer a solution that said, okay, this is one standard way of doing things. It all depends what makes sense for the project. If the project makes sense to do it in small increment, that will probably be a preferred approach. If the project doesn't make sense, we cannot do it in increment, we have to do it more like sequential or traditional, then we have to use the big bang approach. So it has to relate to the type of the project and the work that we are doing. That's why the whole idea about behind tailoring. Now, we cannot tailor everything to the infinite level. What we're saying is that we need to come up with a tailored method. But of course, there are a lot of things that are happening at the ground with every project within the tailored method that's up to the project manager to decide how to do and how to handle. So this is not not intended to become very rigid way of saying, you must follow this exactly the way it is. We are providing some kind of stepping stone, an aid to help people that we start with some kind of characteristics to build a tailored method that as logical as it can be to the type of work that is being done. And then then the competent project manager will have to take it, start from there. So what we are trying to do is to basically avoid having the project manager waste a lot of time on reinventing the wheel. If we invent the wheel, we invent multiple wheels and said, okay, this is the best wheel. If you want to drive in the heat, you might want a wheel or a tire that is high temperature resistance. You want to drive in the snow, you need the snow tires, right? So what we are doing is that, okay, we are, instead of having to redesign those things, those tires, we are giving them the methodology. And from there, the project manager and the organization can decide if there's any further tailoring that might be needed at the project level, and that will be there. So it's not intended to become a set in stone model. That's definitely, it goes against all the principles we believe in. I think we're out of time, but I think I can, if there is one more question I can take and we can stop. All right, then let me stop recording.